Okay, so one of the most common questions that I get from our buyers is, should we buy title insurance? If you Google title insurance, sometimes you're going to find articles that say it's a total scam. Sometimes you're going to find people that are going to say you absolutely need it. So this is always a choice of the buyer. Now, if you are using a lender, then you do have to get lender's insurance, but then there's another part of the policy, which is the owner's title insurance. So I'm going to give you two real life examples of events that have occurred with my actual clients, and then you can decide for yourself if it's worth getting this title insurance. All right, my name is Sean Price. I am with the Price and Price Group here at eXp Realty, and I'm going to give you two examples of title insurance and why my belief personally is that you should always get title insurance. I have no financial stake in this. I do not make any money when you guys buy title insurance. I have no interest in this other than what is the best well-being for our clients. And these two experiences have told me that it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So example number one was one of the first transactions that Kelly and I did when we started in this business, and this is for one of our sellers. And long story short, the seller was a friend of my son, and his father had passed away. So his father was an architect and had built this really unique house, and this was on a property down in Florida. And he had built this really unique house, and he was the original owner, and he worked out of the house, lived out of the house, and his father passed away. So his son received the house and was trying to sell it. We got under contract. I was helping him sell the house. We got the property under contract with a buyer. And when the title company went to get clear title, they ended up finding was that when the developers of this entire subdivision had developed the property, there were two main roads that ran along the perimeter of the neighborhood, and then there was a road that came this way, and this is where the house was located. It was on the road coming this way. Well, the developers didn't develop the property correctly, and they didn't establish this road as a right-of-way to a public road. So this was a private road shared by many houses. And in Florida, to get clear title, you have to have access to a public road. There was no access to a public road. So we were under contract. This issue came up. The title company ended up having to research and tried to call the developing company. Well, the developing company had gone out of business. This was developed back in the early 2000s. That company had gone out of business. So they couldn't be found. So we were in a situation where the house couldn't be sold with clear title. The buyer wasn't going to be able to get title insurance, so we couldn't sell the house. So the title company, in essence, spent months researching, hunting down, finding attorneys, finding these people, and doing all these services. They finally ended up finding a representative of the developer that was able to make the changes that were necessary, but there was a lot of cost involved in that. These were all lawyers that were looking and trying to find this information for months. I don't know what the total values were, but I have to guess it was at least in the tens of thousands, possibly the hundreds of thousands in legal fees trying to get this thing done. Fortunately, the father had title insurance when he purchased the property, so his title insurance covered the entire process, and he had no out-of-pocket expense trying to make this property marketable. Okay, so that was issue number one. Event number two just happened a month ago. So I've got the numbers right here, so I'm going to be looking down and making sure I'm giving you accurate information. Okay, so there was a property. It was a McLean property. It was purchased in the 1990s. We're going to call the buyers the Smiths. So the Smiths bought the property in the 1990s. My understanding is that the Smiths divorced. Mr. and Mrs. Smith divorced. In the year 2014, the property was transferred out of the name of Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith into a consultant company. They basically transferred the property into a business entity. And so therefore the Smiths were no longer a part of the property based on title. They were probably the officers of that entity, blah, blah, blah. And that was in 2014. In 2016, the property was sold to another company who then sold the property to a builder. So in the transaction in 2016, when the property was sold to the new company, there was a quitclaim deed that was signed by the wife of this, Mrs. Smith had signed this quitclaim deed, which allowed the transaction to occur in 2016. Okay, so that was 2016. 2017, the property is sold to a builder. The builder builds a $3 million house on this lot. Now, this lot was worth a couple $100,000 when the Smiths bought it. They built a $3 million house on this property. The property then sold for $2.95 million in 2021. Okay, so we have the Smiths, we have the company in between, the company that bought the property from the Smiths Corporation. So we're going to consider the Smiths and the corporation as one thing. The company that bought the property, the company sold the property to the builder, and a buyer bought the brand new house for $2.95 million. After living in the house for a year, the buyer had to move out. So the buyer put the house on the market. My buyers came in and we put the property under contract for $3.25 million. We were about 10 days from settlement when we get a call from the title company saying that we have a dispute on title. And what had happened was, my understanding is that Mrs. Smith had come back and said that she never signed that quitclaim deed in 2016. She said that was forged. So that property that they had purchased for a couple $100,000 had gone through the company that bought it, the builder, and the new seller. And then my buyer was about to buy it. So my buyer was able to back out of the transaction because they couldn't get clear and marketable title. So we got them out and they went and bought another house. But these were three people in this chain of title that this Mrs. Smith had a claim against because she said they didn't have any right to sell the property because she never gave them the property rights. So I don't know if she's suing all three of them, but I do know that she was suing the seller of the property for the value of a property. Now, this is a $200,000 property, and now it's got a $3 million house sitting on it. So this seller is having to defend this against Mrs. Smith. If Mrs. Smith wins and she finds out and the court rules in her favor, then Mrs. Smith could get that property and get the $3 million house. If the seller did not have title insurance, which he does, if the seller did not have title insurance, he would lose out on all that. So right now, the title insurance, their attorneys are battling for him. They are defending the case. He is not paying for those attorney fees because he has title insurance. And should this Mrs. Smith win and get the property, then the title insurance will make the seller whole. The title insurance will give the seller the money that's the valuation of the property that he owned. So this is a transaction where the seller stands to lose $3 million. If he didn't have title insurance, he could lose that entire $3 million investment. But because he has title, plus legal fees trying to defend it, because he does have title insurance, the legal fees are covered. And if he loses the transaction or loses the lawsuit and does not get to keep the property, then the title company will make him whole. Okay, so these are two examples of where, in my opinion, title insurance is very important. It's a one-time cost. It's based on the sales price of the home. It is fairly expensive, but it covers you in case anything happens. Now, those other two sellers in that chain of three, if she's suing them as well, she may have claims against them also. If one of them doesn't have title insurance, there's an issue there. So my opinion, always buy title insurance, always keep your policy, keep the documents so you have your policy, because you never know how far down the chain something might happen and somebody may come and make a claim against you. All right, if you have any questions, please let me know. I also have several title attorneys and agents that I work with that would be happy to answer these questions further. It's not my area of expertise. These are just my experiences. All right, look forward to seeing you on the next video. Let me know if there's anything we can do for you.